The world runs on addiction. Look at everything around you. Kids vaping, people's backs bent over distracted, everybody isolating themselves from the nagging voice of consciousness with soundproofing headphones, addicts on the streets struggling to stand, bars and pubs filled with red-faced alcoholic droogs, coffee shops everywhere, 4 shots of espresso per cup, lines out of the door. Everybody addicted to the chemical preservatives, sugar and fat stuffed into the daily food of millions. Millions of young men trying to fill a hole of connection through OnlyFans and adult content. Whilst GDP in the S&P 500 might steadily be growing, the West's economic trajectory is running on a toxic fuel, creating a brand new phenomenon known as the addiction economy, the future of the Western world. But what happens if this continues to spiral? Where do we go from here, where everybody's counting their company point subscriptions, getting their drip of dopamine from chains throughout the day? What happens when for the entire economy to function, everybody has to be addicted to products, points, dings, likes, and vape hits, when everybody is constantly being psychologically targeted with chemical subconscious manipulation, and our primal desires being controlled by faceless companies? What will that future entail? Well, this is the coming story of the West, and it's something we need to be paying far more attention to, which is why in this video you're going to soon realize that everything in your life, in all of your friends and family's lives, is slowly just becoming another part of the addiction economy. This is a brand new phenomena, and we're going to explore the future implications of this in the very near future, as this will soon be one of the major coming concerns for humanity. To understand why, we need to understand what is actually driving the addiction economy in the first place. Historian David Corwright coined the term limbic capitalism. This was an early version of the idea of the addiction economy, as limbic capitalism refers to economic practices that target the brain's limbic system, which governs pleasure and reward. Because you see, addiction isn't limited to chemical substances. Behavioral addictions, such as those seen in gambling, gaming, and social media use, exploit the brain's reward system. This is basic stuff, and we're all pretty aware of this at this point. And people started to realize that if they can create products and experiences designed to hook users through constant repeated short bursts of dopamine, you would make far more money in the long run than just a single standalone purchase. That's why companies in the last decade are doing everything they can to get you on some form of subscription, to ensure ongoing consumption and money for the business. And the tactics they often use, such as persuasive design and targeted marketing, actually replicate some psychological techniques used on animals to train and domesticate them. And we can see this really clearly in the tech industry, as social media platforms like Instagram and TikTok are quintessential examples of the addiction economy at work. As users spend increasing amounts of time on these platforms, they become addicted to the attention and dopamine rush that come from likes, comments, and shares. This constant feedback loop fosters a reliance on external validation, which is of course highly addictive, and probably almost everybody watching this has experienced it at least once in their life. However, this attention-seeking behavior whilst rewarding in the digital realm can be really toxic in real life. In real-world interactions, the same behaviors encouraged by social media can lead to shallow relationships and an unwillingness to accept other people's imperfections. People begin to judge and value others based on the superficial criteria used by platforms like Instagram, based on appearance and status. This shift in focus towards self-promotion comes at the expense of genuine connections with others and a broader awareness of the world around them. Alongside these traits, other characteristics of narcissism, such as arrogance and a victim complex, start to manifest. And we see this on a cultural and societal level. We see it everywhere in the media all the time. Celebrities who are victims, arrogance everywhere, people who think they know everything. And this addiction to online validation explains why so many influencers and celebrities, billionaires, crypto bros, all of these people appear so self-absorbed and oblivious to their own actions. A classic example is when influencers get upset when they try and quote-unquote prank someone in public spaces. But the addiction economy goes far beyond this stuff in social media, as beneath the surface of all these algorithms and social media companies lies a razor and blade business model. This is the idea where initial products are sold at a loss or low margin to secure long-term profit from consumables. It's basically how companies make you dependent on their products. In the tech world, companies run on a loss for years, all relying on investor money until they have you so sucked in that you have no choice but to give in to using their algorithm all the time. And so they can then charge the prices knowing that you're so addicted, you will pay no matter what. And if it's not prices, it's collecting your data, exploiting you, or making you more addicted to their algorithms with things like Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts. This is how they suck you in. But before, this used to be kind of contained just to the tech industry. But now this is emerging throughout the entire economy. From printing cartridges to coffee pods, Adobe, Spotify, Hilton Hotels, McDonald's. These are all using limbic capitalism, as they're all trying to transform your one-time purchase into ongoing revenue streams through points, rewards, boosts, and short bursts of dopamine. While they offer convenience and access to a wide range of products, all of these chains, all of these giant brands are making you dependent dependent on their services. And then it becomes almost impossible to switch because you've already gained so much trust with that company, you've given over so much of your information, so much of your money, your time, your data, your points, that it's almost impossible to leave. The muscle memory and habitual nature of all of these services creates a psychological dependency on their products. It could be Hilton hotel points, British Airways points, McDonald's points, Instagram likes, literally anything these days. Everything and anything is constantly pushing you to be addicted to their product. I mean, how many subscriptions do you actually have at this point? It's probably accrued so much over time that you've actually lost count. I mean, the average person in America now spends $273 a month on just subscriptions alone, and yet at the same time, less than 1/3 of Americans could afford a $1,000 emergency expense without going into debt. And this is where things start to get really interesting, because when you peel back the layers, you realize something else is going on here. One of the worst things about the addiction economy is that the politicians who should be regulating this stuff are actually profiting from it. Just recently, Supreme Court Justice Alito sold Bud Light stock, then bought Coors during the boycott. And I found this story thanks to Ground News, a website and app that is designed to dismantle echo chambers and show you the news that you might be missing. Go to ground.news/moon to check them out. With Ground News, you can see how different media outlets report on the news. In this instance, one source on the right claims that it's just a fabricated scandal, whereas sources on the left claim he's just a right-wing internet fanatic. However, the Ground News bias distribution feature shows me that 38% of media coverage of the scandal is by left-leaning sources, and another 38% of coverage was from the right, with 25% in the center. If you don't already know today's sponsor, Ground News does a really great job at making news completely transparent. Their app and website gathers related news articles from around the world on any topic with context like a source's political leaning, reliability, and ownership, so that readers know exactly where information is coming from. But one of my favorite things on the site is the blind spot feed, which shows stories that are disproportionately reported by one side of the political spectrum. If you're on the left, it's useful to see stories only the right is covering and vice versa. They make accurately understanding current events much easier with access to primary sources alongside how the news interprets it, allowing me to fully trust my perception of the world. And they aren't funded by big tech or media companies so that they can stay as non-partisan and factual as possible. Ground News relies on subscriptions to keep their mission of transparency going, so support them by going to ground.news/moon to check it out today. My link gets you 40% off of their unlimited access Vantage plan. So check out Ground News today. But to truly understand where this goes and what are the repercussions of us living in an addiction economy, we need to take a quick look at Las Vegas, a petri dish city that was one of the first to experiment with this kind of economy. You see, the Las Vegas of today is run pretty much by a small handful of companies that own all of the hotels and casinos on the Strip.
Las Vegas has its city limits that stop at the beginning of the Strip, Sahara Avenue. Casino operators intentionally were outside the city. They didn't want to deal with city taxes and fees. Technically, when you're on the Strip, you are literally in paradise.
These faceless giant companies are usually offshoots of investment funds or mega chains from New York that are doing everything humanly possible to addict and exploit anyone who arrives in the city. It's a giant billion-dollar industry, an industry of casinos, entertainment, hookers, drugs, and alcohol. At the core of Las Vegas is gambling, an industry inherently linked to addiction. The design and operation of casinos in Las Vegas is meticulously crafted to maximize the time visitors spend gambling, thereby increasing the city's revenue.
These casinos pump extra oxygen in the building to keep you awake and keep you more alert. And again, this is one of their mini tricks to keep you gambling, to take more of your money.
Psychological manipulation plays a crucial role in this, as casinos are obviously designed to be immersive environments where you lose complete track of time and become so engrossed in the gambling experience, you don't realize how much money you've actually spent. The absence of clocks and windows creates a sense of timelessness, encouraging you to play all day and night without ever realizing how long you've been sat there. And the use of lighting, colors, exciting sound effects creates this stimulating atmosphere that almost feels like a fairy tale.
Bonus frequency was good, the bonuses were fun, the graphics are beautiful, line pays were good. Music, I mean, there's a lot of people are saying it's a great game.
All of this is psychological manipulation, and it's tested in laboratories and on animals. Everything possible to addict you is being employed here. Even loyalty programs, where you can get various rewards such as free drinks and discounted stays, as well as complimentary meals, all makes you want to gamble more and spend more money at these hotels. These perks create a false sense of achievement and incentivize repeat visits, something that's all too familiar in the rest of the economy. And by doing this, they foster a loyal customer base that continually returns to gamble in Vegas, making it the third most most visited city in the US by tourists. And it not only increases the amount of money spent, but also ensures a steady stream of repeat customers. Each year more and more is invested into this. The floor plans are designed to be labyrinth, making it so easy to be lost in a maze of gambling tables. Everywhere you walk, all the hotels, shopping malls, everything you can think of is all connected by giant hallways of casinos. You're always surrounded by the sights, sounds, the intrigue of the hotels, all the entertainment, everything is there to keep you gambling. All the advanced algorithms, the psychological triggers, the intermittent reward systems create such a compelling cycle of addiction that most of these hotels are worth billions alone. Once you're in this disorientated, timeless, and dopamine-stimulated state of mind, the billion-dollar investment funds controlling this use all of their powers to unload a wave of other addictions at you at the same time to keep you in this unthinking stupor. From the minute you arrive at the airport, adverts for the biggest dispensaries in the world are shoved in your face, brothels scattered around the city, and once you're actually in the strip itself, you're in one of the only areas in the whole of America where you can drink openly on the streets without issues. So once all your primal desires are satiated, and you've been put into a drunken high stupor, you'll find yourself in the Venus flytrap that is the strip. Bombarded with lights, mascots, icons, drugs, alcohol, and women, every single thing around you is designed to addict you. And once you're there, it's almost impossible to escape without spending a fortune. And of course, at the heart of this money-making machine is addiction. And it's working amazingly for Vegas. The economy there is booming. So what if you extrapolate this and implement it into every other facet of the wider economy? Well, this is what's happening today. You see, the reason Vegas is so economically successful for a handful of investors is exactly the same reason as the model of addiction replicated in all industries. Just like I mentioned before, and as is done in Vegas, subscriptions and point systems are one of the best ways to addict you on a constant basis. For instance, if Netflix were to become a one-time purchase product, it would cost at least $2,000 for the basic ad-free plan. However, by spreading it monthly, it makes the service far more palatable for consumers. Same with all the Apple products, same with cars, same with mortgages, everything's the same here. And investors love this because it makes businesses easier to operate and scale. There's very little fluctuations in income, and this predictability allows companies to plan their expenses more effectively and invest in growth without needing to keep large cash reserves to weather potential downturns. And this is why Americans are spending more and more on services that were once done and dusted purchases. But there's a much more shady side to this addiction economy, and we can see the issues of this most clearly in the vaping industrial complex. You see, e-cigarettes and vapes were originally invented to help those who smoke give up the habit, or at the least allow them a hit of nicotine without the damage of smoking tobacco. But however good the initial intention, vaping soon became just another way of exploiting human addiction. As interest in sales of vaping products took off, vape manufacturers such as Juul Labs, Enjoy, and Blue began offering a range of nicotine-containing products in various flavors and formulations. Big tobacco companies such as Philip Morris International, British American Tobacco, and Japan Tobacco International all started to enter the market themselves, either through acquisitions, partnerships, or the development of their own vaping products. So what started out as a mission to get people off addiction became a new multi-billion-dollar addicting industry, all designed with colors, flavors, advertised as a healthier alternative, and oftentimes with far more nicotine, the substance that's actually getting you addicted in the first place. And a perfect example of the dangers of this can be seen with Josh Temple. You see, in the early 2010s, a young actor named Josh Temple realized he wasn't going to be an actor, but he was starting to see that the potentiality of states legalizing weed in America was becoming a real possibility, and he wanted to be at the heart of this boom. So he decided to venture into the weed business, founding his own company Honeycut Labs. And from 2011 to 2018, Josh Temple immersed himself in the THC vaping scene, learning everything he could about the industry. And that was when he found the lucrative niche of THC cartridges. Realizing this was going to be a giant industry, Josh launched a product early on that would become infamous, the Honeycut Diluting Agent. You see, Honeycut's flagship product was a cutting agent designed to be mixed with THC oil and vape cartridges. It had no taste, no smell, and maintained the same viscosity as pure THC oil, making it indistinguishable from the real thing, primarily being made from vitamin E acetate. It was great because you could dilute THC oil and increase profits significantly with this new agent. And so by 2019, with the legalization of cannabis, Josh's products were selling rapidly as demand for THC cartridges soared across the US. Competitors saw their success and began to flood the market with this stuff, all using the same vitamin E acetate and vape cartridges. Little did anyone know how deadly this would truly be. In April 2019, hospitals in Illinois and Wisconsin started seeing a surge of young, otherwise healthy patients admitted with severe lung injuries. These patients exhibited symptoms such as chest pain, nausea, and shortness of breath. Nobody knew what this was, but suddenly the cases were piling up. However, they all had one thing in common. they were vaping frequently. So the CDC began investigating this mysterious illness taking over America, and that was when they found that those using THC vape cartridges were having their health destroyed by this THC agent, vitamin E acetate. Later that year, it got so bad that there were 2,800 reported cases and 68 deaths linked to this, as they saw when vaporized this compound was causing severe respiratory issues, including lipoid pneumonia, a condition where fat particles enter the lungs. And that was when Josh Temple would realize the gravity of this entire situation, quickly leaving Honeycut Labs and changing the company's registered address and recalling all his products back, shutting down everything and leaving the company as soon as possible. But despite this, the authorities were after him, and Andrew Cuomo, the former governor of New York, would issue a subpoena for Honeycut, demanding detailed information about the company's operations. And just like that, Josh Temple disappeared from the map. And there's very little information about what happened next. Nobody really knows what happened, or if he ever faced any legal consequences for this. But it started to show the dangers of the incentivization of weaponizing people's addictions against them. And Josh's story is just the tip of a giant iceberg. The entire vaping industry strategy to capitalize on nicotine addiction reflects a broader trend in which companies across all sectors are exploiting addictive psychology to ensure customer loyalty. Because from a business perspective, having an addicted customer base is incredibly advantageous. And what's even better is an addictive population, as once you've made a population dependent on you, you make sure you always have money coming in every single month. This reduces customer acquisition costs and also increases lifetime customer value, making addiction a highly profitable strategy. And of course, like we've already mentioned, this is so prevalent in almost every industry, from vaping to gambling, social media, even hotels, everything. Every single brand is now doing this with points, rewards, offers, subscriptions, getting millions upon millions to unknowingly fall into the addiction economy that the Western system seemingly relies on today. And the more and more dependent the population becomes, the easier it is for these companies to raise prices continually, allowing the market to always squeeze you dry, as all other alternatives get crushed by this. And if they're not economically destroying a population, they're also destroying them physically. For example, the food and drinks industry is estimated to be worth hundreds of billions of dollars in the US alone. While the provision of quality food in abundance throughout the year is one of the biggest life-changing achievements of modern society, the most profitable side of the business has come recently, with the introduction of ultra-processed foods, which is pushing people to eat more and more and spend even more on food. Canned goods, packaged snacks, ready-to-eat meals, sugar-saturated cereals, GMO crops, Monsanto-owned seeds. The control of food by a handful of companies has made the entire world reliant on just a few name brands. With the convenience they provide and the addictive formulas they put in their food, it's become just a normal part of life that people eat slop on a daily basis. Slop with ingredients people don't even know, but the convenience, palatability, and shelf stability has made this food cartel insanely powerful. And because they're so powerful, it's almost impossible for any researcher or scientist to get mainstream notice about the damage it's doing to the West. Time and time again, it's been shown that big food uses bogus science, pays off researchers, pays off the scientific community to lie about the dangers of foods, so that nobody's ever aware of how dangerous the addictive slop they're selling really is. Foods that contain a long list of additives, preservatives, flavorings, and other artificial ingredients to enhance taste, texture, and appearance. High in refined carbohydrates, added sugars, unhealthy fats, and sodium, while lacking all essential nutrients, fiber, and other beneficial compounds found in whole foods. And the more often we eat these foods, the more we expect all food to be blissfully delicious, and reject the plainier taste and texture of old-fashioned real food, the stuff that's been demonized by the corrupted scientific community who's paid off by these big food companies. Even Edward Bernays was infamous for using propaganda against Americans to convince them that having bacon every day in the morning was a healthy, iconic American thing to do, all for the benefit of a few giant corporations in America profiting from the fact. And if that was done almost 100 years ago, you can only imagine what they're doing today. I mean, almost everything in the shops these days is stuffed with ingredients that almost makes the food you're having completely unnatural. In fact, it's actually becoming harder and harder to eat healthy and just have food without all of these ingredients. And through trial and error, Big Food has discovered the ingredients that really appeal to us, the colors that strike out at kids. It's almost at a subconscious level at this point. They found that the right amount of emulsifiers produces an irresistible texture. They know that inverted fructose syrup really fires up the brain's sugar receptors. Modified food starch is used as a thickener, and hydrolyzed protein is used as a flavor enhancer, making it seem that having chocolatey protein bars or things like Huel is somehow actually healthy. And unfortunately, many of the ingredients used are no longer recognized by the body body as food. They are just chemicals that make us want to eat the product in which they've been put. So much of what we buy to eat is not necessary. It is just there to provide satisfaction and dopamine. Short bursts of it. Not long-term satisfaction of healthy living, but the short-term satisfaction of relieving an addiction. I mean, is it any wonder that people across the world are now starting to have the worst health in history? More and more people are obese. More are suffering from sicknesses, allergies, and overall food addiction. And as a result of this, hundreds of billions have been made for a select handful of giant food companies. But nothing is more devastating or evil in the addiction economy as the pharmaceutical addiction sweeping the streets across the states. Criminal cartels and legalized pharmaceutical cartels are spreading debilitating substances into the hearts of communities across America. In 1996, Purdue Pharma introduced OxyContin, a long-acting formulation of oxycodone. And Purdue would market OxyContin aggressively as a breakthrough treatment for chronic pain, claiming that its extended release formula reduced the risk of addiction and abuse.
Less than 1% of patients taking opioids actually become addicted.
However, Purdue did everything they could to downplay the risks of addiction and minimized all concerns about the potential for misuse, which, as you could guess, contributing to widespread overprescribing and overuse of OxyContin. The widespread availability of prescription opioids like OxyContin led to a surge in opioid prescription and misuse in the United States. Millions upon millions became unknowingly addicted to opioids after being prescribed them for legitimate medical reasons. And as this became more and more common, soon these opioids were being illicitly sold on the streets, all through doctor shopping. It didn't take long for overdose deaths to skyrocket, leading to what is now recognized as the opioid epidemic. And you can see it on the streets. Poor homeless people freaking out on the streets, quote-unquote zombies in places like Philadelphia and San Francisco. But the pharmaceutical companies, of course, made billions from this. But for an untold amount of patients, opioid treatment led to years of paying for a substance they didn't need and were addicted to. All the while, Big Pharma continues to market their products by bribing healthcare providers with financial incentives, leading to a huge overprescription of drugs and long-term use of short-term drugs. And not content with making billions of dollars from the opioids themselves, Big Pharma then also capitalized on the opioid epidemic by profiting from the treatment and recovery industry, creating the problem and then selling the solution. Because the more addicted you are to their substances, the more money they make, which they can then use to lobby the government with for more control and power to push these addictions on the people. And it's not just opioids, Ritalin, Adderall, anything you can think of is being pushed on the American public to make them more addicted to these pills.
How did OxyContin take over the marketplace? So originally Oxy was meant for people who were like terminally ill with cancer and were in severe pain, or somebody who's on the upper echelon of the pain threshold. And the goal of a company and a rep is to grow the market and to hit the number. And so when you go out, it's like, how do you grow the market? Well, we're going to grow the patient demographic. We're going to have to grow. We need the doctors to write more of this. So what they did with OxyContin was they went out and started, it got to a point where they were literally promoting it for people with migraines, and they were pumping these pain pills into all these practices.
And today, this whole process is accelerating in every industry. Everything from renting pods and never being able to afford property, to even delivery service subscriptions just to push your order ahead of others' orders. Even finding love has become a commodity. I mean, almost everyone is using dating apps these days to find someone. But the truth is, dating apps aren't really meant to actually work. If they work too quickly, they wouldn't make nearly as much money from the subscriptions. People would use them a few times, find someone meaningful, and then delete their account. Instead, these apps do everything to keep people on the apps for as long as possible, addicting you to their service. At first, they bombard people with attention to make them feel wanted, giving them a huge dopamine surge, putting them at the top of the algorithm to increase their chances. They'll show you all these beautiful people just waiting for you to have, but very quickly, they'll take away this honeymoon period, tightening the valve to make you purchase a subscription. It happens on every app, stringing you along with little dopamine bursts until they make you so desperate that you start spending money on the app itself, using your primal psychology to addict you to their services. All entertainment is the same thing. Nobody owns music, nobody owns movies anymore, it's all rented. And now even renting isn't enough. Even if you rent, you still have to watch forced ads and have to pay extra subscriptions to get away from these ads. And God knows what this is going to look like with the rise of AI. Only time will tell, but it is clear that every single thing is slowly being made into another facet of the addiction economy. And it's a horrible, worrying trend, because the longer this continues, the poorer the average person becomes, and the less sense of security you have in the world, because you don't own anything. And so the more aware we become of this coming trend, the more we can fight back against it with our wallets and our voices.